Hello, this is a parent seminar. I'm Bob Kauffman, and I'm part of Critical Thinking for Success. I really thought that parenting would be a good subject to talk about since it's one of the most important roles that humans can play in the development of future citizens of our country and helping them become really good thinkers, become independent, be able to contribute to society, to be able to be contribute to the society, and to be able to solve problems. So most of us have not had much training in parenting. I know I didn't. And uh, when I started learning about critical thinking, I found that, hey, this is good stuff. This would be really helpful for parents to know. How do children's brains develop? So that's why I decided to do my first webinar on parenting. So I want to just talk about the context of all this. Prior to World War II, children were seen as economic assets. They were to help bring money into the family or goods or services, and they were trained to do that. And then after World War II, we got to be so wealthy that we didn't need children to do that. And our idea about how children contributed began to change. And so we don't expect children to work so much. We don't expect them to do a lot of things that they used to be expected to do. And children's brains develop from doing those kind of things. And to be able to think through and be able to solve problems came from the very activities they were engaged in every day with their parents. Also, prior to World War II, most children saw their parents doing things. They'd be on the farm or shop or whatever, and they actually saw their parents working. Now, most children don't know what their parents do. They haven't been, they don't, maybe they'll go down for a day, but they don't see their parents working every day. So, this is an important change and shift. An analogy that I put is that at one time, humans ended up working physically mostly. Like my dad had a roofing company and my uncle on the farm. They didn't go to the gym after work because their very worked their bodies out and they were in good shape from the work that they did. Well, now after as we got more and more machinery to do that heavy labor and work, we now end up we started getting flabby and unfit and everything, and had to start creating gyms to work out. Well, now we need the same thing for our brains. Computers are doing so much of the critical thinking that we used to do. Look at GPS. A lot of people are terrible at direction orientation because they use GPS all the time, and the computer is pretty good at direction orientation, but humans aren't. So um, we need to understand how do we help the child work their brain out so that they develop really good critical thinking skills. We need that. When we don't work them out, then people don't know how to do things, and people get anxious and they get nervous and they get depressed and they get self-critical because they're not terribly successful. And a lot of teenagers rebel as teenagers to show that they're independent, but they really know that they're not. They show their independence by doing the opposite of what their parents want rather than being able to be independent. So when a child is born, their brain has some programming. Their heart works, their lungs work. They can swallow, they can breathe, they can do basic survival things, but critical thinking skills haven't been developed yet. The child has capacity to build them, but they haven't been built yet. And there are a bunch of different skills that the brain needs to develop in order to function successfully in this world. I'll name a few. We need shape recognition, we need direction and orientation, we need analysis and synthesis, abstract sequencing, and so forth. There are a bunch of basic skills that are very important if we're going to be successful at higher level functioning. These skills are built through the child's interaction with the parent. And the brain begins to build templates. So, like in shape recognition, to be able to recognize different shapes in the world, they need to build templates in their head so that they can match up. We do that with computers. If the computer doesn't have a template for the shape, it can't recognize it. The same thing with our brain. We need to be able to have great templates to recognize things in the world. This is why children sleep so much. They sleep a lot because they get hit with billions of bits of information, all the different bits of information they're taking in. They have to organize it. So they'll be going along and sort of like tilt, and they need to sleep in order to catch up on all that information they've taken in and be able to organize it. Now, you want your children to be good at learning and everything. There are certain things certain conditions that really help children learn the best. One is safety. People learn best if they feel safe. If they don't feel safe, they get into fight, flight, or freeze, and their brain doesn't work real well. Now, doesn't mean you can't challenge the brain, but you help them build up to that. You don't start off right away at a super challenging level. When I was working with the Marines, they do not, in basic training, send the Marines out the first day and have them crawl through an obstacle course with machine gun fire over their heads. Now, later on, they do that. But they first get them prepared and ready for higher level stressful situations. So people need to feel safe when they're learning. They need to feel like they're okay, that they're just here to learn and grow, that otherwise they're just wonderful. They are wonderful souls in this world that are just magnificent, and they need to feel accepted. Are the people on this call, don't you want to feel like you're okay and accepted, that, feel safe? Well, kids do too, and it works best for them. They flourish with positive relationship, where they really get their parent cares about them, loves them, and wants the best for them. Now, a key piece of this is a parent believing in their child. Lots of children are faced with different things and they don't believe they can do it because they've never done it before. They have never done it. So they want to do it, but they're afraid. And this is where the safety side of the brain comes in. That when we were in the trees as prey, anything unfamiliar would scare the hell out of us, and we had to be on guard. Well, we still have that. So anything unfamiliar the child's going to feel uncomfortable with. Even though he might want to do it, he's going to be uncomfortable. And so what the child needs is somebody believing in them. And then one of the things that I have a model that I've developed called modeling, mentoring, and monitoring. So what allows the child to take on things that are unfamiliar is having a pathway to follow and be supported. So the safety side of the brain will let go and not put such a brake on if it has a clear pathway to follow and it has support from people who believe in him. So one thing to do, modeling, is giving them a pathway. So you show them how to do it. You talk about what you're doing and why you're doing that, and you let them watch you. This modeling is way people have learned for hundreds of thousands of years. So you want to model what you want them to do. And then you want to do it with them. And once they're able to do it with some proficiency, then you just want to monitor how well they do it. So I suggest that children get jobs pretty early in life, like maybe around 2 or so. And one of the examples I would give with that would be, hey, let's say the little child's John. I say, John, you are an important member of this family. And you participating in the family is extremely important. All of us here are important members. It makes this family work. And everybody has jobs. And now we have your first job here that you're going to learn, because you are an important member of this family. And your job will be to get up in the morning without my help or your mom's help. And that will be a great contribution to the family. So how we're going to do that is I'm going to show you how I get ready, and I'm going to talk about the things I do and why I do them in that order. Okay? So what I do is I show John how I get ready, and I talk to him while I'm getting ready. Then I say, John, now that's modeling. And then mentoring, I said, John, we're going to get ready together. And while John's getting ready and I'm getting ready, I take John's picture of each step he's taking. And then afterwards, I get him those pictures printed. And I end up then sitting down with John and say, John, which of these pictures came first? What did you do first? What did you do second? And he might not know all of it, but as I work with him and ask him questions, we get them in the order that he did the activity of getting ready. And then I say, John, this is your job description. Every job should have a job description, and this is your job description. And we're going to tape it on the wall. And when you get ready in the morning, I'm going to be here, but I'm going to ask you to follow each of these steps so that I don't have to tell you what to do. You can see what you need to do. And then I work with John doing that for a while until he gets pretty proficient at getting ready in the morning. And then I say, John, look, you don't need me here anymore. You can get ready by yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going downstairs, and when you're ready, you come down, and I will just be able to see how well you did. So As he starts following that job description himself, while I'm there, I'm monitoring how well he does, and he can ask me questions. But then once he gets pretty good, I can go down and I monitor. My monitoring goes further and further away from the activity until he can just do it by himself, and it's not a big deal. And then once he has that job, I say, now we got your second job, and we go through the same process. And your second job is to get ready for bed, and so forth. So we want to do that with John, so he gradually learns all these different things. And this doesn't just apply to work or doing things like that, it also applies to physical games. Play was always before was to help people become adults. I mean, when I was a kid, we played firemen, we played policemen, we played farmer, but it was all about being an adult. Now they have computer games that doesn't have anything to do with being an adult. So play was a useful way that people really learned these skills. And so skills like kick the can or hide and go seek or whatever has a lot of different skills that the child needs to develop to be good at it. And so you not only help them learn how to do work at home, but you help them learn to play also. And when you play with them, that will become certainly more fun for them and so forth. Okay, so the other piece that besides modeling and mentoring and monitoring, stories are really useful. The stories we learn a lot from, and we're programmed because humans, that's how wisdom was passed, was through stories. So you want to tell stories and they'll love it. And you get good, as parents, you should get good at telling stories. It's story time. Let's talk about and help them learn how to tell stories also. Lots of wisdom comes from telling stories, and we feel safe when a story is being told, and we can learn a lot from that. Now, these skills that children need to develop are learned through everyday activities, like getting ready in the morning, going to bed at night, helping clean their room, working out in the yard, in the garden. All of these activities help develop important critical thinking skills. They need to learn how to break things down, see how they work, and so forth. So lots of people don't even know how a furnace works. They don't know how a hot water heater works. Kids don't know how water gets into their house. I asked one kid, I had outside the window of my office was this water tower, and I said, "What is that?" He said, "Well, that's where they paint the name of the town." He had no idea what that the tower was, or even why would they build water up, a big tower and having the water up there. So, in fact, I run into a lot of adults that don't know why do they build this big bulb up there and fill it with water. There are reasons why they do that and go to the expense of that. So having everyday activities and helping children think through things is really important. And not doing for a child what they're able to do for themselves is critical. If you do for somebody what they're able to do for themselves, you undercut them. You and an important part to understand is when you help them become independent of you by doing things, they actually get closer to you. The ironic thing is, as you help a child become independent, they build a relationship with you that is positive, and they want to be with you because it's positive and fun, and you believe in them, and that most things can become learning experiences. And if they do something that makes a mistake, they make a mistake at, well, they should experience the consequence of it so that they learn from it. And kids will make mistakes and whatever. Well, that's part of what our learning is. And you could always talk to them about that. And parents should be willing to let their children have consequences so that they learn. And kids will learn fast. What I notice most of the time is kids are training their parents. They're training their parents to take care of them and make them happy and whatever. And the children don't learn how to become really good at thinking. So activities, example of just learning direction and orientation. Lots of children get driven places and they never pay attention where they're going. And then they get their driver's license, they get lost. So I always say, hey, if you're going to go somewhere, get a map out, a real physical map, and say, hey, where are we going? Help them learn how to read a map. And if you don't know how to read a map, learn how to read a map so you can teach them how to read a map. And then when they're going there, have them tell you what direction, have amnesia and say, hey, I don't know how to get to your friend's house. You need to do that. Okay? You need to, otherwise we're not going to get there. So you give them activities like that where they're challenged, and they will end up thinking through things much better. These skills that help us, like direction orientation or classification and categorization and so forth, are learned best through repetition. So teaching them all kinds of jobs that will cause them to repeat things will help these skills get well developed. And so you want it embedded in everyday life so there's constant repetition so they get better and better and better. To give you an example, there's people, hopefully most people know of Wayne Gretzky, kind of a great hockey player. So somebody was interviewing him and said, Wayne, how did you get to be the greatest hockey player? You're not the strongest, you're not the fastest, you're not the biggest, you're not the quickest. How did you get to be the greatest? He said, well, one big thing that contributed to that was my dad, when I was little, would give me a pad of paper and have me watch hockey games and with a pencil draw on the pad of paper where the hockey puck went. I did that probably hundreds of times. So when I got on the rink, I always sort of knew where the hockey puck was going to be. Not where it was, but where it was going to be, and I could get there before anybody else. And that really helped me be a really great player. So repetition helped him tremendously. And giving children different jobs that are going to be repeated, they will develop these skills. So a lot of work I do is helping parents learn what different activities will help their children develop these skills with good repetition. And you want them repeating things well. You don't want them repeating errors like my golf game. It's a well developed series of repeated errors. What you want to do is train them in things that really work, that they can repeat and are good at. So there's a lot of different concepts I like to present, but one of them about the brain is the different languages we use. We use activity language and we use procedural language, and oftentimes aren't even aware of the difference. And when you're training children, you need to know the difference. Even if you're an employer and you're going to train employees, you should know this difference. Or if you're a teacher, you should know the difference. This is important concepts. So activity language and procedural language. Activity language is for efficiency. Procedural language is for accuracy and training. So, give you an example. Most of you who are on this call probably drive cars. And I could say to you, hey, drive to the store and get some bread and milk or whatever. And in doing that, it wouldn't be a problem because you know how to drive. And you'll be safe and you won't kill anybody or whatever. But if you didn't know how to drive a car, and I said, hey, drive to the store, if you were able to get the car moving, you could kill yourself or somebody else. So I would need to break back down what are all the procedures necessary to drive a car, and break it back down, and then have you practice it. So a lot of things happen is that because it's easy for us, it's simple for us, we tell somebody to do it and we think, well, they should be able to do that without any problem. But they can't because they have never been trained in the procedures. I see this at work all the time. I see this in sports. I see it lots of different places. So at school, a lot of times they've never been taught how to break down writing a paper into procedures. They don't get broken down how to read a textbook with good procedures so that they can do really well. And so helping people break important things down into the procedures really helps them. So going back to the John and having the job description, all those pictures were the different procedures needed in order to do the activity of getting ready in the morning. So understanding this, and if you really want to teach children well, you break it into procedures so that they can begin to see how it all works together and they can repeat it. And before long, what will happen as they repeat those procedures will go into an activity and go unconscious. Our brain wants to take procedures, make it an activity, and take it to the unconscious because we get super speed there. And that's what you want with people, is getting them to be able to take good procedures that allow you to get great results and repeat it often enough to where it becomes an activity for them. Down at Millennium Park, they have the bean. It looks whole, But when it was put together, it was in pieces. And they had to do all kinds of things to get it to where it looks like one whole piece of metal. So we need to do that as we train people. And a lot of like excellent athletes are terrible coaches because they went from procedures to activity very quickly and have forgotten what was it all necessary to learn this uh, sport or whatever. That's why a lot of coaches had to really work hard to get good at the sport, and they recall all of what they needed to do that, and they often become better coaches. They can break it down into procedures necessary. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that today. And we have probably a few minutes, so I wanted to talk about another piece, and that is having the family plan their week. Planning is a very important skill. Looking at how do you plan things, how do you make them happen. And I have a whole model around planning, and in a future seminar I'll get into that. But I wanted to address that if a family would sit down, say on the weekend, and the parents and children would plan, not just schedule, but plan their week. How are we going to create this week? Because you are the creators. Nobody else is going to create your week. You are. Okay? So sitting down and starting to think through, well, how do we want this week to go? What do we need to do? Yes, we need to schedule it, but we need to be able to visualize through it on how we're going to accomplish it. And you want your children to see you planning, because that's, again, modeling planning. You want them to see you planning for the family, planning for each of yourselves and your couple. And then you want to talk to them about what are they planning for the week? And how are they going to take responsibility for remembering what they need to take to school, or what they need to have for if they play basketball or whatever, so that they're thinking it all the way through. And that the family uses that time to come together and plan their week. And then if you're doing that you can look at, well, how did we do with our plan? We planned this last Sunday. How did we do? Did we create a great week? What worked? What didn't work? So we can review it. We can celebrate. Wow, did we have a great week? We got these things accomplished, and whatever. It really felt fun working with you, and so forth. So that you live your life virtually prior to living it actually. I usually suggest people live it several times virtually before they live it actually, and learn how to do that. And I have families do that. I have businesses doing it, and it makes a big difference. So family meetings are really important. You kids, talk. You want people to learn how to not just look at cell phones and everything, but you want them to look at learning how to really communicate with one another and have conversations, meaningful conversations. So family meetings are very important, and the more you have them, hopefully the better you get. Okay? Now, there's a few things to develop good brain critical thinking skills. Number of things are important. Nutrition is really crucially important. To have good whole foods. are important. To have good exercise so that people get used to exercising. That's another thing you should do with your children, because if you do it with them and it's a positive experience, that activity will bring up that feeling for you. I love to fish. I love to play basketball. I did those things with my dad, with my brothers, and everything. Those things I love, and I'll never stop loving them. But the more you do things with your children, it's imbued with those positive emotions. Very important. So good exercise. Enough sleep is really important, because our brain uses that time to process uh, uh, these skills that we're developing. The other thing is that there are so many screens. Right now, I'm talking to a screen. It's cycling at about 60 cycles per second, and it triggers the brain, and it really helps us focus. If you look, kids can be on the phone or on a video game for hours and hours. You take it away, and then they can't spend 5 minutes on their homework or whatever. Well, it's because they get addicted to those screens. So you should really limit the screen time, because the brain needs to develop its own ability to focus and not use that 60 hertz that's coming off the screen. And you might want to even use amber blue blocker sunglasses to cut down on the hertz. Having those things really taken care of will help the brain develop well. And I've talked here I think there's a couple of questions that have come up that I'd like, I'll be willing to answer. Just wrapping up, parents are crucially important to the development of children. Just want to reiterate, to have a positive relationship with your children, expect a lot of them, but support them. Now, one other thing I want to underline is some kids' schedules are crazy. They are overscheduled. They need time to play. So really watch, don't get them over involved in too many things, because it doesn't help. I was in the seminary at one time, and we took 28 semester hours in the college, and I had 4 foreign languages at the same time. And what I learned from all that was never do it again. So try, really watch not to overschedule your kid, because our society promotes that dramatically. You want them to have play time, you want them to have sleep time, and so forth. And homework is not that important. I mean, you need to do some, but if you get monumental, you should talk to the teachers about how overwhelming that they're making it, and they make it too important. So now we'll go to some questions. Here's a question from Katie. What age do you think is developmentally appropriate to expect kids to participate in planning? Well, first of all, sitting there watching the other people plan, I would say 2 or 3, you get them there and say, look, you can be here, and we'd like you to participate. And maybe they don't participate in the whole meeting, but they start coming and getting used to it. Maybe you hold them on your lap or whatever. But certainly by 4 or 5, they should be participating. You can ask them questions and so forth. And then as you have things like planning a vacation or a weekend or a party, whatever, you really get them involved. Well, how should we do this? What should we do? And they get better and better at being able to contribute and being part of the whole planning process. Um, so I don't there. I hope that answers that question. If if there are any other questions, please feel free to put them up there, and I will try and answer them. Um, the Otherwise, you might get me talking about other things. Um, so, if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to take them at this time. Um, I can't reiterate enough how your participation with your children are so important. Um, you can also, if you want to text your messages, questions to me, you can do that. My phone number is 847-845-0422. You can also use that if you just want to text a message to me or a question to me. So when I work with older children and adults, what up until about 16, when I work with children that are struggling in school or whatever, I train the parents to be the coach, because some learning these skills require things happening every day, and so I train the parent to coach the child and get the understanding that parent has so many years more experience, and it's their job not just to love them but to coach them. So I don't see any other questions. So I've covered most of the material I wanted to cover tonight. I hope it's been helpful, and I will be doing some webinars in the near future, about once a month. We'll let you know what they're about. I will get into covering the different skills that children need to develop, and those skills, the more efficient they are, the better people can perform in life. I've worked with businesses, and I started working with athletes because the business people kept coming back and saying my golf game's improved, my tennis game's improved, my basketball game's improved. And so then I started working with athletes too. So this can be improved at any time in life. So I hope that this evening has been useful, and if you'd like to participate in future webinars, that we will be having them once a month on different topics. We will be going into what are these skills particularly, and then how do you work with make sure that each of these skills get well developed. I just didn't plan on that tonight because it will take us some time to get those the knowledge of those skills, and then how do you embed them in everyday activities. So I thank you for participating or being on the webinar tonight. I hope it's been valuable, and I will hopefully talk to you in the near future. So good night, have a great evening, enjoy yourself, and hopefully I'll talk to you in the future.